What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the RotoWire DFS team preview show. My name is Jack Burkart. You can find me on Twitter at Jack Burkart. I am joined for part 4 of this marathon series. Ryan and I have been recording these in one clip. We're staying fresh. We're getting up in between and doing our stretches and whatnot. Moving location as need be for better tech. Ryan, who works harder than us? We're just true grinders out here.
Nobody, Jack.
Nobody. Let's dive into our last 5 teams. And a team near and dear to my heart, Tottenham Hotspur, is next on the table. So this is going to be the second season for Big Ange Postecoglou. Spurs got up to a really rip-roaring start last year. I mean, all the Tottenham fans were singing Ange's name, like we've got our Tottenham back. And it felt great to be a Tottenham fan. And it did not feel as good to be a Tottenham fan in the second half of the season, where the team really struggled to score goals. Now, if you look at how they did last year, they were a little bit lucky in terms of expected goals. And it feels like a 5th place finish kind of flattered us a little bit, especially, I'm saying us, it flattered Tottenham a little bit. They really could have finished quite lower. Like teams like Chelsea and Newcastle were playing much, much better towards the end of the season. So I think Tottenham, they need to do a bit of business to improve. They've signed Archie Gray, who I think is more of a defensive midfielder. Ryan, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Timo Werner was pretty good for Tottenham. He's going to be I think he's on loan again or a permanent signing, but Timo Werner will be around again. And big rumors that Tottenham want to sign Pedro Neto, but Neto has been connected to a lot of teams, so that might not happen. I've seen Tottenham connected to Ivan Toney. I've seen Tottenham connected to Dominic Solanke. People don't want Richarlison to play. I think Richarlison is good. I just gave a speech earlier about Darwin Núñez, so I'm not going to necessarily die on that hill one more time, but I think Richarlison can offer something to this team. But overall, Ryan, I mean, what do you think Tottenham need to succeed? A team that were really good for DFS, like James Maddison and Pedro Porro, really up and down games, really high implied team totals. What do you think Tottenham have to do to improve to maybe get to the next level?
Yeah, kind of a bit of everything. I mean, it'll help to have, Postecoglou with 1 year under his belt. Should fix some things, should have learned some things. But they gave up too many chances and they didn't score enough. I mean, Pedro Neto would really help them. They could use a player like that. They could use a center forward. You mentioned they were looking at a guy like Solanke. They could use a guy like that. But you would expect Maddison to get a little better, play a little better. I mean, there's reason to be optimistic. I'm a big fan of Archie Gray from what I've seen. And I even went and watched some compilations on YouTube. I mean, he's 18 and you can see why they paid so much for him. I mean, he played fullback a lot for Leeds last season, but he will probably end up as a center midfielder. And just from all the stuff I've seen, it makes sense that he's that highly rated. Looks like one of the best talents of his generation. So I'd be excited about that signing. Again, though, is he going to change something this year as an 18-year-old kid who's never really played in the Premier League? Maybe not so much, but that's one for the future. Could be more of the same for Spurs if they don't do anything, though. Timo showed us again that he's always going to be the same guy, kind of. I thought Brennan Johnson looked good. He should get better, but I'd be excited about him. Son getting up there, I thought we might see some drop-off last season. Maybe we did, but should get more of the same from him. And, yeah, I'm with you. I think Richarlison gets some maybe unnecessary hate or slander, although he does bring it on himself sometimes. But just as a player, I think it's a guy that you guys want to keep for sure. I mean, we see at his best, he's a starter for Brazil, and at his best, he scores goals that other players can't. So, yeah, I do like Richarlison. I think he's very important to what Spurs are going to do this season. But, yeah, I think they could improve. Defense could improve. There's a lot of talented, high-valued players there. They just need to put it together more. So it's on the manager, I guess, in a way. I mean, I don't think they have enough for top 4. But, I mean, I remember you guys posting the table in the Discord after 5 or 6 games last season. So, there's potential there. We saw them hang with Arsenal. That for the first derby was a equal enough game back and forth. They have it in them. But then we also saw like towards the end of the season, like you said, like where almost like Man United in a way where you didn't really mind playing teams against Spurs because they're going to give up some floor points and allow some goals. We'll see. I think they need to make a couple more signings, attacking wise for sure. I don't see. Who did they lose? Just Højbjerg?
Højbjerg is the main player that we lost. I think Højbjerg is a good central midfielder, but everyone who knows ball, quote unquote, said that he wasn't a good fit for Big Ange's system.
Yeah, he doesn't give you anything like physically or like pressing or like he can't keep up with guys. He's good at all the other stuff, but probably just like a little bit too stationary and not like quick or fast enough for what he wants to do. So yeah, that's fine. Maybe is Archie Gray going to play out in midfield? I would assume. I mean, I know he played fullback for Leeds, but I mean, that's the guy you want there. Maybe he can come in right away. We saw Kobe Mainoo certainly good enough to do it. Gray just really impressed me. His technical skill is like off the charts for a young kid. And I mean, he looks like a baby, but he's actually pretty big, like 6'2", pretty good physically. They paid like 40-some million for him, which was kind of like random, I thought aggressive at the time. But yeah, he looks worth it. Maybe that ends up being an upgrade this season. Set pieces, that one for DFS. Kind of went back and forth at a time between Porro and Madison. You know, we were jamming Porro for a while and he was taking the sets. Then he sort of stopped taking the sets and it was Madison who took most of the sets. And Porro becomes a guy that, he still has a floor, but it's not as good. And obviously he has upside. We saw him score some goals and get forward. But yeah, it'll be important to know who's taking the corners between them. And maybe they just sort of do the same thing where both deuce off and on. I don't know.
Yeah, it might be a bit of wild guessing, but I think the first slate for Tottenham is a showdown on Monday against Leicester City. So you can just probably play both safely there, and then we can slowly figure it out. So fortunately, it's not a decision that we have to get right away, but it could change. I think, Ryan, Tottenham have a lot of talented players, and they're all like above average. No one really stands out as particularly elite. So it's tough for Tottenham to figure out who their best team is overall. Like, Basuma's a good player. Sarr's a good player. Archie Gray might be a good player. Who are you going to play? You're going to play two midfielders in that system. Who are the two of the best Tottenham three attackers to play? We saw James Maddison fall out of favor for a little bit. And, a player like Kulusevski has kind of struggled on the right wing. Like it was so frustrating watching him go down the right wing, cut inside, but about twice as slow as Arjen Robben. And it was just completely predictable. Probably had to be the most block shots in the Premier League. It was tough to have Son only as a center forward because it's tough for him to earn service, but then you can't play Timo Werner. Then you can't play, Brennan Johnson on the wing. So it's kind of tough to figure out how to make all of Tottenham's talent, configure it in the best way. And I think that might contribute a little bit to figuring that out. I mean, I think if Kulusevski moves centrally, he'd be much better for DFS, but that's James Maddison's spot and he's better. So I don't know. We'll see how it goes overall. One DFS take I'll have is I like players like Destiny Udogie. I think he's really good. I think he's good on the ball and can drift inside. Not necessarily a floor player, though. He's not going to cross a lot. Maybe he'll shoot a couple times and he still could get assists. But Tottenham as a whole don't really cross a lot when they don't really have a target man. So that's just one thing that I would consider. I mean, I don't know. I think they should be in good spots. We're going to want to play some of their players, but rotation will be an issue. Ryan, what's your kind of final verdict on Tottenham?
Yeah, I think we summed it up pretty good. It'd be nice for them if they got another attacker or two. Because like you said, it's tough with the personnel that they have. I think you could see sort of a similar thing to last season. They don't really have a center forward at the moment. Is Son going to play winger? But yeah, then Brennan can't. And Kulusevski can't really play central if Maddison's playing there. Kind of a weird group of players that he has to make work.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. As long as I don't know. I would love to taste of that first half of the season so I can post some more way too early Premier League
Yep.
tables in the Discord, rotowire.com/chat if you're not in there. Let's move on to our next team then, Ryan. Nottingham Forest. So Nuno Santos took over this team in the middle of last season. You've heard us talk about Steve Cooper and our opinion of him in our previous video. I think our second one. And Nottingham Forest barely stayed alive. I think they took a points deduction, Ryan. You can correct me if I'm wrong, and they finished 17th place. They were a little bit unlucky in terms of goals conceded. That 14 more goals conceded above expectation, but still were not a team that were able to produce a lot of attack. They've lost a midfielder and defender in Niakate and Mangala, and they added Milinkovic from Fiorentina, who's a decent defender, so that helps. They have Elliot Anderson, who might play a midfield spot, maybe above someone like a Ryan Yates. I don't quite know there either. I don't know much about Jota Silva. It feels like a team that definitely needs to improve its player personnel a lot in order to be successful. I mean, from a DFS point of view, we had Gibbs-White taking some set pieces, but Ryan, players like Danilo started to take away a set piece monopoly, which definitely hurt a little bit. Chris Wood played well. Hudson-Odoi played really well from a floor point of view, and Elanga was always cheap and playable as well. Kind of similar to Bournemouth, but less rotation, I guess. These attackers from Nottingham Forest are good in principle, but with only 49 goals, it's tough to get excited and jam them in. So what's your outlook on Nottingham Forest, Ryan?
Yeah, I think it's going to be more of the same from what we saw at the end of last season. I think they're going to battle relegation. They're plus 200 to be relegated, right there with Everton. Right there with Everton and Wolves as the three, I guess, quote unquote, worst Premier League teams from last season. And yeah, they haven't really done much. Just Jota Silva, I don't know much about him. They got him for $7 million. Apparently he's a winger. I wouldn't think he's better than Hudson-Odoi, or he's not going to take Hudson-Odoi or Gibbs-White spot. Maybe Elanga. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how good the guy is. But they paid a lot for Elliot Anderson, who everybody always talks about. So apparently that's an upgrade. We haven't got to see him play too much. I mean, he was in and out for Newcastle, but everybody loves this guy, and they gave him a lot of money, or they paid a lot of money for him. But yeah, I think it's going to be the same thing as of now. At least they'll play the same as they were playing at the end of last season. I don't know, not much else to say really. More of the same. Rely on Gibbs, White, and Odoi for a lot. You said Chris Wood did okay at the end. Danilo started taking sets, so for DFS, Danilo, will be in consideration at times. Yeah, more of the same. Not much has changed.
Yeah, Ryan, it's pretty dark when I'm saying, Chris Wood played pretty well. That should tell you all you need to know about Nottingham Forest, scoring 9 points less than an average team in terms of floor. So kind of tough to profitably attack outside of the set piece takers. I guess names we haven't mentioned, Ryan. Taiwo Iwoni had some really good spells and some times with good goal scoring form. I believe he's a fairly talented player, so maybe if he's healthy, that will help somewhat. I'm trying to see who else might be DFS relevant here. Adam has Neco Williams projected to play a lot of minutes again. He's a player who, when he's crossing a lot, is really useful. He will cross a lot from open play. And with 110 crosses in the season, Adam might even be projecting him for some set pieces that could happen. But yeah, it seems like the Gibbs-White monopoly might die down a little bit, and that just makes it really tough to play almost any Nottingham Forest player.
Yep. Nope. I agree. We might see Nico take a few sets. Danilo started to take them. Tofolo even took a few at times. But it makes Gibbs-White tougher for sure. I feel like towards the end of the season, he was taking half again, where you were reasonably confident that he would. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, that's tough. It's such a bloated squad too. I see Nico Dominguez, he had some 3-game spell where he was really good, and it seems like they constantly make changes to their 11 as well. So maybe a team that just needs to find some consistency, and maybe they can get it together.
Enough to stay up though, probably. It's the same team, and they did okay at the end. And like you said, they have a bloated squad, but of guys who succeeded in patches last year. So they could do okay. They could be better than they were last year.
Yeah. And at least they're kind of predictable in how they scored points. I guess Danilo complicates thing, but it's going to go through the wingers and Gibbs-White. So that kind of makes up for.
And Hudson-Odoi scored quite a few curlers, quite a few cutting in. Like, man, he was like, I don't know.
FIFA goals, finesse shot.
Are those going to come again this year, or maybe not? Then it would be tough for them because he was kind of bailing them out a bit.
Yeah. Well, they're definitely going to need some help, so we will see how that goes. Let's move on to our final promoted team, Ryan. We have Southampton, who you said were the most likely promoted team to stay up per the odds, but I mean, that's still like plus 135, so that's not exactly that optimistic. Southampton won their promotion through the playoff, which is always very exciting and tough to do. And they played very well. I mean, they slightly overperformed their goals for, but conceded 24 goals above expectations. So definitely a better defending team probably than their numbers suggested. So maybe I'm often worried about these promoted teams that leak a lot of goals, Ryan. That's often a recipe for absolute disaster, but maybe the expected goals say that Southampton can somewhat keep it together. We'll just have to see how that works out. Some familiar names on the Southampton squad as well. I think we have tilted some min-price Adam Armstrong in the past. I remember Edozie and Mara being options when the relegation season. They signed Flynn Downs from West Ham, who's a fine young player, but more of a defensive signing. And another big signing I saw recently that came through the wire was Ben Brereton, a player who played really well for Sheffield United. He might actually log into this starting lineup and as a player who can make a difference. You got Ryan Manning taking a lot of set pieces. Some pretty experienced players overall, players we've seen in the Premier League. So, Ryan, do you agree that Southampton have the best chance to stay up?
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. Maybe like you said, because of the defense. I don't think there's a lot there attack-wise. But just comparing them to Ipswich, I think probably Ipswich has the worst squad. So, yeah, I think it makes sense that Southampton's better. They have a decent defense. Kyle Walker-Peters has always been a player that could be in the Premier League at any time. He could have played for a bigger club any of these last few years. They have a center back that Harwood Bellis or whatever his name is on loan from City. It's people seem to think he's pretty good. He's highly valued. And then a bunch of attackers that we've gotten used to being frustrated by. I don't know, guys with potential that kind of never came through. That Adam Armstrongs,
Joe Aribo. How much money did we lose in cash punting with Joe Aribo, right? It was brutal.
Yeah, right. We tried with Sekou Mara and Edozie, but we've seen it sometimes out of them. They have something. They're 21, 22 years old. One of them used to play for City. Edozie, I believe, was on loan from City. I mean, so some talent here. And they paid for Flynn Downs, who's obviously a decent defensive midfielder. We saw him play for West Ham a little bit. And they have some they've got a lot of young talent, even a Shea Charles and a Carlos Alcaraz. So actually it does make sense to me. I think they probably have the best talent out of the promoted teams. For sure. Yeah, the best attacking talent. Yeah, all over the pitch. And they signed Ben Diaz, who we know has goals in him. So I think, I don't know. They're I didn't want Southampton to get promoted. I forget who did they beat? Leeds, right? Yeah, that was annoying. It's unfortunate we got Southampton back in the league is what I remember thinking. From DFS, their set pieces, small bone. I know we've seen on some Manning, but it'll be interesting to see if Manning's a starter. He was in and out of the starting lineup, I remember, towards the end, but he's a guy who, is known for his left-footed prowess over sets. So him and like you never like playing like a Will Smallbone and trying to rely on him for sets. I don't know. I feel like they'll be a bit of a frustrating team, Southampton.
Yeah, no one that has a real clear-cut floor, but maybe it's probably gonna be one of those things where there's just cheap Southampton players, and you just have to play one of them to make it work, and we're gonna be bashing our head against a wall over it.
And I mean, I remember like Ryan Manning. Will he be listed as defender or not? Because I even think it was still last year. They just had a midfield eligible, even though he's like playing left back, still taking sets. So it's one of those.
It's annoying.
Yeah.
I see Adam Lallana is in the squad, so there's some Premier League experience. So maybe like Lallana helps in that.
Yeah, they actually have like a decent squad for a promoted squad. It's quite a bit better than Ipswich's. Quite a bit.
Yeah, some of these guys hit their potential. I mean, just to echo it again, Ben Burton, him playing that well on that horror show, Sheffield United team, I think that makes me bullish that Southampton is the team that might be able to score enough goals to stay up. But
yeah, I think so too. Yeah, like guys like Armstrong, Edozie, and Mara, even get one of those. They all have potential. Get one of those guys firing. Yeah, I think Southampton could stay up. There's some goals there, and I think there's decent defense there.
Yeah, I could definitely see myself early on playing some Walker Peters, who has some okay performances. They're all going to be cheap, so that's what makes it work. Like if you play like a 6,000 Ben Brereton in the first week, depending on the matchup, I would be fine taking a risk on such a thing. Any final Southampton takes, Ryan?
I don't think so, no.
Let's dig into only two more teams. One of the teams I'm most biased against in the Premier League as a Tottenham fan and as a enjoyer of good soccer. It is West Ham United. So we dealt with a couple years of David Moyes, having some success, but playing really negative soccer. So we see that the offense rating is, 5 points below average, and then the conceding rating was 10 points above average. So West Ham were a total mark in DFS previously. They just played really passively on the counter. And Ryan, it was really frustrating because there are some really, really, really good players on West Ham. I don't know what's going to happen with Lucas Paqueta with his gambling-related suspension. I think that's under appeal. But right now, I think Adam has him in a lineup, and I'll look at his minutes when I pull up the projections. Mohamed Kudus should not be playing for West Ham. He's an absolutely terrific left winger, a player who was really productive for DFS. I played him in some questionable spots, but I thought he projected well. You're a big fan of Jared Bowen. Antonio's fine at center forward, but not that inspiring. But I mean, they have James Ward-Prowse. There's some decent players on this squad, Ryan. Do you think that they can improve at least their performance? Because, I mean, they did finish ninth somehow, but under a new manager, Julian Lopetegui, I can't say his name. Do you think that West Ham will improve, Ryan?
Lopetegui. He was actually the Real Madrid manager for 1 year, but he failed there. Went to Sevilla after. Did okay there. Came to Wolves. We remember him at Wolves for maybe he was only there for a half season recently, but didn't like that. He was making halftime subs every game, it seemed like. Not too excited about him as a manager. We'll see. But really the most important thing by far is Kudus. I can't even undersell or oversell how good Kudus is. One of the best players in the world. I can't believe he's not on a bigger team yet, the biggest of clubs. I think he could start on any team in the world, actually. Might be the best in the world at carrying the ball, dribbling, putting it all together. Couldn't be more impressed with Kudus. So they really need him to stay, I feel like, if they're gonna finish top 10 again. And I think right now they're predicted to be, or the odds have them at ninth again, right around there. They definitely need Kudus for that, though. But with Kudus, there's some players there, like you said, Paqueta, that's a world-class midfielder. Bowen is any team would love to have Jared Bowen. I mean, you even saw him do okay for England in the Euros when he came on, changed that one game. But yeah, always been a fan of Bowen. So I think if this is the team, it's probably going to be pretty similar to what we saw last year, up and down, but some times where they look competent, but also like Kudus and Bowen carrying them, and even like Paqueta, like they rely on those players. Those three are so good that like the rest of the team doesn't need to be that great for them to finish top 10. I think the only guy they've signed is this Luis Guilherme, or wow, I don't know how you say his name for sure, but seems like a pretty promising player. Don't know too much about him. But yeah, they just really need to hang on to Kudus. I think in general, I just thought that, yeah, if they keep Kudus, it'll be like the same West Ham as last year. I just don't think they got a manager who's going to change, like, not like make a radical difference. I don't know. He's an older manager who failed when he was with Wolves and like sort of failed at other spots recently. I was kind of surprised by it, but I don't want to sell him too short, because I mean, he managed Spain at one point and then Real Madrid hired him. Like, he was thought of as a top manager, but I don't know. That was almost 10 years ago now. Really, it's Kudus. This team needs Kudus.
I agree. Just from a DFS point of view, like I distinctly remember it was some 2-game slate and Chelsea was in a pretty good spot. And like West Ham were playing against, like, I can't quite remember, but it was a questionable spot for West Ham, like playing against like a Newcastle or something like this. And I remember playing Kudus in cash, and shout out to Sharp Old Jack right here. Only me, Redcoat, and Moneyball did that. So that's called knowing ball, Ryan. Kudus is just that good, I think. I think he can make a difference even in a bad matchup, because he's such like an active player for our DFS stats, and he's able just to create on his own. Like, he can dribble and stuff. So I think that makes him a really good commodity, even in tough spots. So I think early on for West Ham, I won't be afraid to play Kudus in GPPs, even if the spot's kind of poor. It's how you used to play like Saeed Benrahma all the time, Ryan, and make some money off of him. I think he's just a player who can get it done, and the talent is just outrageous. And you need him at some low ownership overall. Ryan, we haven't talked about the Tilt King himself, James Ward-Prowse. He'll probably be starting. We'll see. We saw that, he's a player that definitely needs set pieces to get there. He's not going to play more forward. I think he had one game where he scammed us as an attacking midfielder, but even like Souček was getting ahead of him, and Paqueta was definitely playing ahead of him. We even saw that he wasn't always taking all of the set pieces, Ryan. So what do you think is the initial outlook for James Ward-Prowse? I faded him much more often in the field, sometimes to my demise, and sometimes it was pretty sharp. Just like really volatile for a set piece taker.
Yeah, I think for the most part, fading him turned out to be pretty sharp last year. That's how I'm going to go into the season thinking, at least until I see a change in West Ham, or, yeah, is he going to be a 90-minute player, or is he going to be a guy that gets subbed, and is he going to have a monopoly or not? We saw Bowen end up splitting with him last year, but they don't really have any new players, so like him and Bowen are still really the only set piece option, I think. They signed Max Kilman. I see. Actually, they broke the bank for Max Kilman. Actually, I think they spent like 45 million on him. Who's actually really good for Wolves, and people thought he should have been starting for England too. So that's an upgrade. But yeah, back to Ward-Prowse. Yeah, probably going to be off it at the start until I see some evidence,
Yeah, I feel like there's two types of tilts. I didn't play James Ward-Prowse tilt, and West Ham are getting 13 corners. And then I did play James Ward-Prowse tilt, and West Ham are being West Ham. And I think I'm much more willing to take the fade. Like, if I lose a couple times because of James Ward-Prowse, he's often like chalk, and I just don't like playing chalk James Ward-Prowse. I don't like him playing him, period. So, you're not going to win every single time, and I'm just fine taking an L in his profile. Watch him score like 5 penalties or something stupid. There's so many ways that he beats you, and I guess the number of outs is what makes him a good play. He just doesn't have like a good median outcome in him, and that's tough to deal with, in my opinion.
Yeah, nope, I agree. Maybe they'll have a different formation, and like he'll be in a little bit different spot. I guess I'm not too up on how Lopetegui wants them to play or how they're going to line up, but we'll look into that a little bit more. And in price, obviously, will be a big thing too. His price started to get pretty cheap by the end, so maybe that will bring him back into play. But yeah, we'll see.
I mean, less than 5 open play floor is absolutely
Oof.
absolutely brutal. Like that's like legit terrible. Actually, like that's like Van Heck open play floor. Let's see. Anyone I missed? I mean, some decent defenders on this team. West Ham are a team with a lot of talent, so maybe I should have been kinder to them at the start. But it's just the play style thing.
They do have a lot of talent. They got through kind of on talent last year, finished 9th. You could see that happening again. Obviously, if they keep Kudus, I think that's about right for them where they will finish again.
Yeah, I think so. All right, Ryan, let's go into our last team, a team we've mentioned a couple times already, Wolverhampton. So Wolves signed Gary O'Neill as their manager last year, which was kind of strange because he was, I think, sacked by Bournemouth after underperforming. But Gary O'Neill actually kind of got some decent performances out of Wolves. They finished 14th place overall. Definitely were a little bit questionable defensively, conceding a lot of goals. I feel like they were a little bit lucky to maybe snag the wins that they did, especially with this type of expected goal differential, Ryan. Probably benefited from like Everton taking 8 points deduction. As far as like key incoming players, they have Strand Larson coming in. Tommy Doyle was signed permanently. Ryan, maybe you know some about these other players, but this is a team that could definitely downgrade overall, and they already struggled. Like if they lose Pedro Neto, that's pretty rough. I mean, you don't want to rely on an old Sarabia necessarily, and losing Max Kilman, who is a good defender. I mean, they played with Bueno, Dawson, and Totti, but I don't know. That's definitely a loss overall. It doesn't look great for Wolves looking at this lineup, Ryan. What do you think?
No, I think you got to worry about Wolves here, especially if they lose Neto. But even with Neto, yeah, there were some games where they were very, very bad. Just like couldn't create chances and just like, gave up a ton of floor points. Even in spots that you thought might be neutral spots, they ended up looking like clearly the second best side. And it looks like they're going to get worse. They lost their best defender in Kilman. They might lose their best attacker in Pedro Neto. And then where are the goals going to come from? Sarabia, he's a little bit older now. It's already just not the type of player that's going to
Right, I'll tell you where the goals are going to come from. They're going to come from inexplicably kind of high priced Hwang Hee-chan as chalk on a slate where it doesn't make any sense when I don't
Cunha,
play
they still have Cunha? Obviously, they need Cunha to have a big season. But they got Strand Larson on loan. I played Strand Larson a fair amount in interleague for Celta Vigo, but he's a big 6'5" target man. So I would assume, I don't know if he's going to be a starter, but if he starts, obviously they're going to want to cross the ball to him a lot. That's the type of player he is. But not much to be excited about for Wolves. I think probably, if and when they lose Neto, that they're in trouble. You're going to need Cunha, big season from Cunha, who has shown it. He's shown capable. Cunha could definitely play for a bigger club. But they don't have it really. They don't have anything besides that. I don't, Aitneri took sort of a step last year. He's a promising player, good player, definitely should be in the Premier League. So that's a bright spot. Tommy Doyle too, definitely a Premier League quality player, but Traore too. So some okay players, but nothing to get excited about, and definitely going to struggle to score. You're right. They're going to need Hee-chan to come good, like he does. Just scores random goals in any type of way.
I hate it.
And then you're going to need Cunha to have a big season. From DFS, it's sort of like last year, I guess. Well, without Neto, this is Sarabia kind of again. Older now, probably not a 90-minute guy, but again, we'll see. They don't have much else. They need him to be. Yeah, they if he's fit enough, maybe he will be. Similar outlook, except I think they got worse and probably going to lose Neto and get quite a bit worse.
Yeah. I mean, there's still some good players like Joao Gomez, I think, played for Brazil in the Copa America. So, I mean, there might be enough to salvage this. They also struggle a lot with injuries. I know that kind of pushed like Ait Nori into an attacking midfielder. So I knew that was a bit of a dilemma for us at times in certain slates. Kuna's a player who often has a really good floor. Who, you know, he's like a good like shot utilization rate for every minute that he plays. So I think that's reflected. Like his open play floor is actually kind of similar to Pablo Sarabia's. So
in a way, he's like
a guy you can play.
You can kind of compare him to a João Pedro in that way, just like a João Pedro light, sort of.
Mm-hmm.
Just talking about the open play floor.
Yeah. That makes sense. Diet João Pedro.
Diet João Pedro. I mean, very diet, but like the same type of shots and 90 minutes and that stuff.
No, he's like the sugar-free Starry that replaced the Sierra Mist. That's that version. João Pedro Sierra Mist, and then I don't know if that's a Midwest only.
I can't believe how bad Starry is. Tried it once a couple of years ago. Never again. Oof.
I had it on accident, and it was the sugar-free, and like I don't know how my parents even tolerate it overall. Ryan, do we have any final takes about Wolves? I think it's just going to be looking at their forwards. We'll want to play Sarabia and maybe some Ait Nori. I mean, maybe you'll fool yourself into some more Nelson Semedo, but we usually know that ends with a yellow card and frustration. But any final takes?
Not really. I'll play Ait Nori in certain spots, maybe.
Yeah, Ait Nori and Sarabia.
Yeah.
And Prey, I think, overall.
Yep.
Whew. Well, I think that does it with all of our previews. If you made it through every single minute, thank you very much. Thank you for your support. I really should have been plugging RotoWire.com throughout this entire thing, but I'll be posting this sheet that I have for your consultation in the Discord probably sometime next week after I make some adjustments. RotoWire.com/soccer trial. If you're not a sub, that's the best way to support the show. You know, other ways you can like this video, you can share them, you can comment, all of that stuff really helps us out. And Ryan, I'm looking forward to another season of Premier League. I think, Euro contest filled at the end, so I'm a little bit bullish. Maybe we can have another decent year of Premier League. Maybe not like much, sometimes we worry about decay, but maybe we can just kind of keep it neutral and still have some decent contests and stuff.
Yeah, I think we can. I'm excited. Good luck to everybody. Obviously, we'll be back before the first slate. But yeah, excited.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for the support, everyone. And like Ryan said, we will see you before the first slate to start everything in earnest. So on behalf of myself and Ryan, thank you very much.